So if you've got yoga blocks, you can put one block under your shoulder blades and one block under your heads. Well, your head. If you don't have yoga blocks, you can use throw pillows, and I'm going to go ahead and set myself up with a throw pillow one today just so you can see what that looks like. And then I've got some different options available. So this is I'm going to put one underneath my upper back, and I'm going to let my head drop backwards over this, okay? I might decide I want a pillow under the legs as well, so that there's a little bit of a release right there at the hip. And then deciding how my head feels as it drops over the back of this cushion, right? So my chest is elevated and I'm letting my head drop back. That's the fish pose setup generally. So this is a reclining pose. That's usually a big core strength back bend. And we're doing it in a supported way with some props. Now, if your head doesn't completely touch the floor, but you like this kind of setup where you are lifted in the chest, you can put a blanket or something like that under your head to get yourself started. I'm just kind of positioning myself until I find the just right spot. I'm also going to put my feet together like a little butterfly, I think. I'm sort of liking that shape today. So it might take a little bit of like snuggling to get your shoulder blades just right. So take the time to do that. And then we're going for this feeling that the chest is kind of expanding out. Okay. And letting yourself breathe. We're just going to stay for a few minutes to let the body settle into this position. If it's really uncomfortable, it's not ever going to really feel like a lazy boy recliner. It's not super soft and relaxed for sure, but it shouldn't feel uncomfortable either. It might be a little strange, a little unusual, but it shouldn't hurt. There shouldn't be anything that feels like it's overdone or aggressive. And then take nice deep breaths and try to let your breath help you with this expansion in the chest that we're working with. Now we're going to stay for about another minute. This is our longest pose of this particular sequence or class. All right, yogi, so we're going to take a nice big breath. I'm going to go with a sigh. You can bring your knees together if you've got your knees out like butterfly wings. If your legs were straight and you want to just bend the knees, that's also fine. And then I'm going to roll myself over to one side, hopefully without knocking anything over today, and then pull out the pillow from underneath my upper back. Oh, okay. So now that I've done that, I can feel sort of the expanding sensation of my chest and my back kind of settling back into place. I love the way that feels. It's one of my favorite poses, like especially at the end of a couple, if I've been on the computer or leaning over my sewing machine for a few hours, it feels really nice to do something like that. So I love it as a little lunch break because maybe you've been leaning over your computer all morning. Okay, so we're bringing the knees in and giving ourselves a little hug before we stretch all the way out. Now, I'm going to make room for myself. I'm going to kind of wiggle down my mat, and you may have to wiggle a little bit in your space, but we're going to stretch out as long as we can from fingertips to toe tips, and then we're going to turn this into a banana. So, or we're going to turn ourselves into bananas. So I have bent from the side waist over to one side with my upper body, and then I've brought my legs over the same way. So now I've got one side of my body, in this case my left side, that's quite long, and then my right side is curling in. Okay, so you can take the outside leg, in this case my left leg, cross it over your inside leg at your ankle, and then as you let this hip get heavy, for me it pulls quite a lot more on this IT band and the area right here in the front of my hip. You can leave your arms extended over your head. I like to grab one wrist with the hand, but you can also bend your elbows out to the sides, more like a cactus or wings. So allowing yourself to settle in. And for me, it was feeling pretty good without the crossed over legs, so I'm going to go back to neutral, but you can keep whatever you like. Don't roll onto your side. You want to make sure that your pelvis, both wings, and both shoulder blades are still resting on the floor. One might be a little heavier than the other, but mostly they're both on the ground. And it doesn't seem like much is going to happen. Sometimes when I hold this pose, the first time I saw this pose in a book on yin yoga, I thought, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. And I lay down in the pose and I didn't really feel much of anything. But when I stopped doing the pose and I straightened myself back out, I was pretty surprised at how impactful it had been. So sometimes one of the kind of neat things about yin is that we don't have to go to a point where we feel really uncomfortable to be able to get benefit. So the edge in yin is the point where I just feel something. Not all the way to the point where I can almost not stand it. And that's a really important concept to begin to kind of work with. Like, where is the point where you just begin to feel something? And so, for some of us, that's going to be easy to find, and for some of us, it'll take a little bit of practice. And so we've been here for about half the time we're going to stay. We're going to stay a wee bit longer, about another minute, a little over a minute and a half. Again, it may not seem like anything's happening. Just hang on and we'll see. Maybe it'll work out really great. So just a few more breaths here. All right, yogis, take a big breath. And then we're going to wander ourselves back to the center. Oh, I always bring the upper body first, let the lower body swing in the last. But you can do it the other way around, just whatever's most comfortable for you. So automatically, just returning to the center, I would swear to you that I've lengthened one side of my body 3 inches. It's just very interesting to me how cool that feels. Now, if I look at my 2 feet in reality, I probably haven't done that, but it's really interesting to feel like you've made one side longer than the other. I have set up a situation where small furry creatures are going to get into plants, so I need to move my pillows along with small furry creatures, and then I'll be with you for the second side. Now, I always like to do these little windshield wipers or a little back massage before I do my second side. Sometimes that pull right through this lower back area, the quadratus lumborum, right around where the sacrum is and meets the hip, sometimes that's a little intense when I come out of it. So usually holding it doesn't feel intense, but when I come out, I can feel how that area was under pressure. So a little back massage is nice. And then stretch yourself out and bend yourself into your opposite banana. And again, we're going to stay for a bit. So hanging out here and letting the body get heavy. And maybe you've got that leg crossed over at the ankle because that feels nice today. Take nice deep breaths. Oh. So we're just shy of 1 minute left here. Or, I mean, just over 1 minute left. Sorry about that. All right, okay. So we're going to take 2 more big breaths. And then we'll come out of there and see how things went. Now, yeah, I pretty much feel even on both sides. Sometimes that's not true. One side always stays a little bit longer, but it feels pretty darn good. So give yourself, again, like some little windshield wipery legs, or you can bring your knees in and do a little back massage. Now, we're going to come up to a seated position. So once you kind of give yourself a chance, you can roll to the side. I don't usually like to move too quickly with yin or restorative or gentle yoga. Give yourself a couple breaths. You can do some little ankle circles while you're here. And then we'll sit ourselves up and we'll do some hip things. Well, I don't know how hip they're going to be for the hips anyway. Whether they're hip or not, we'll determine. Okay. Getting silly now. Okay, so you can start with like some little cat shapes with your back. Little washing machine shapes. And then we're going to start with either a square pose or a shoelace or some equivalent. All right. So the shoelace is like gomakasana except without the arms. So you put the knees on top of each other. Now when I do this, one sit bone, my pelvis has to tilt. So I can do this shape if I elevate my pelvis. Okay. Now for me, this is a better shape. So this is the square, and by that what it means is that the thighs and the shins are making a square with each other, okay? Hello, softness. How are you, sweet girl? Okay, the other possibility, if all of this is going to be for naught, is to sit with your thighs as close together as possible, and then one shin can be out, or you can even have the bottom leg straight. Now, I like to use blocks. So you can use a pillow here if you don't have a block, but I put the leg, so instead of squaring it up on top of my shin, I put a block in front of me an inch or two, and then I let this go at an angle. You can put it in as close as it feels like going, but this allows me to get the square, and I also don't have the weight and the boniness of this ankle resting on my inner thigh, which is a tender place. Now, if you sit up nice and tall, and you've got what we're trying to do is stretch this outer hip, up here, gluteus medius, all the way down and around, and potentially in through the IT band as well. If you don't feel anything sitting up, start leaning forward. Now, clearly, you can lean as far forward as you can put your elbows on the floor in front of you if that's how far you go. But for me, just a little tilt forward is usually enough to create this sensation. And then you just pause and breathe. Normally, this is a time where all of the furry creatures in my house are sleeping, but not today. Today, it's a bit of a free-for-all. So, to the best of your ability, pausing and breathing, we're going to stay for about another minute and a half with this shape. So if this gets too spicy around the knee joint, you can take like some pillows or some blankets and kind of shove them in underneath to provide a little extra support and see how that works. If it just is way too spicy, you could always roll onto your back and hold your legs in this position. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Excellent. All right, yogis, we're going to take a nice deep breath. We're going to let go with a big and then we're going to come on up. So lean back away from your leg and then unwind that leg. And we'll give everything a little bit of a shimmy. And then I like to just see, like, how did I treat myself? Does it feel like, I did anything that I'm going to pay for later? Sometimes I don't know until later. But if it feels okay, everything seems pretty good. We're going to do the other side. So you'll take the opposite leg, and you might need a couple more minutes before you're ready to do that. But take your opposite leg and then test it out, because it might be that this side's a little easier or this side requires a little bit more support. And so again, like for me, this knee is a little more vulnerable. So I'm going to grab a blanket and just give my thigh bone and my shin bone just a little bit more support so that my knee isn't the one that's kind of taking that pressure. Usually it's because there's like something, if you feel pressure in the outside edge or the inside edge of the knee, it's because there's some torquing that's happening between these two. You know, this is a set of bones, but you get the idea. Like there's some kind of drop in, or there's weight being put in a funky place on the knee. Sometimes it's because of a different muscle, or, you know, because some muscles go through the knee joint. But in any case, if you can support both halves, the lower leg and the upper leg, that usually will support the knee. You can also flex your foot a little bit more, and that kind of locks these two lower leg bones in place inside the knee joint a little bit and prevents them from overdoing things. So if you have vulnerable knees, take care of them. And again, like if you feel sensation out here already, you don't necessarily need to do any more. If you don't feel sensation, lean in until you feel something. Sometimes that sensation will pass and everything will get lighter and you won't feel it anymore, and then you can go a little further forward. So that's how you surf the edge of a yoga pose. Choosing appropriately for yourself. We're about halfway through here. Taking nice deep breaths, just letting yourself settle in. So something just kind of interesting we can do for the last minute here, if you are up for it. There is a marma point and an acupuncture point in the foot that is designed to do a couple things. It helps with vitality, and it can help us release feelings of fear or insecurity. It's called the bubbling spring point. And so if you trace the ball mound of your big toe around until you feel a kind of, it goes up like it's going to be between your first and second toes, and you just kind of feel until you find a spot that feels a little more sensitive. You can put a tiny amount of pressure on your little bubbling spring point there. And you'll, like, the only way to know it's there is it feels kind of slightly more sensitive than all the tissue around it. And for me, it's more sensitive on one foot than the other. But in Qigong, or, you know, some of the Chinese ways of thinking about things, this is the place where we absorb the sort of energy of the earth. So we connect to the earth's magnetic field and chi field there. And then it also, the kidneys relate to fear and insecurity. And so when we release, or when we kind of have enough energy flowing into us, we don't feel fearful or insecure. And it's possible that we don't have the best chi flow going on right now. I haven't been barefoot on the earth in a while. So give yourself just a little stimulation. We're going to take one more breath. Oh, and then we're going to let go. Come on up. Lean back. Unpretzel your legs. Give everything a little rinse out. Oh, it felt good, actually. I like to manipulate the bubbling spring point. There are times where I've done that, and it's felt very, very sensitive. And in that case, I am very, very gentle. Today it felt really nice to just give it a little firm pressure and a little kind of, like, I did this little circulating thing with my thumbs that felt kind of, or with my finger. I was using my middle finger because it's just the right positioning for it, but it felt kind of nice. So you can experiment with that. See, I'm not an acupuncturist, but I've never had an adverse reaction if I've just been gentle with myself and honored whatever the sensation was. All right, now your legs may want to be a little bit tighter. not quite as wide in the V. You might, I've been sitting here kind of rocking from side to side, kind of feeling out my sit bones. It's possible that bending the knees and sticking like a cushion underneath each knee would feel nicer. Actually, that does feel good, so I'm going to go with that. And so then we're going to just kind of fold ourselves forward. You might want a little, if you've got some pillows or, couch cushions or some blocks, you can put some things up in front to lean into or lean onto. I like having a couple blocks for my elbows. Now with yin, I generally just let my legs get really relaxed. So they kind of flop out a little bit. Because I've got these cushions, they're holding my toes a little more towards the upright position, which is interesting. So now as I'm leaning into this, I'm feeling things a little more in my inner thigh in a little different way than when I let them get really floppy. So if you want to experiment with that, where you can still keep the muscle relaxed, but the prop does part of the work, it's an interesting approach to yin. And then the kidney meridian runs through this inner thigh. So in addition to starting down here at the, the space between the two toes, right in that little zone, it also runs up and around and through the inner part of the thigh. And so when we do things that kind of open up the inner thighs, there are meridians in that area for the kidneys and for the liver. Wrap it around the top of the thigh a little bit, we get stomach and spleen. Around the back a little bit, we get to the bladder. So just nourishing the parts of our body that help us keep things flowing and keep things moving. And that balance out our emotional state. So stay with this pose, and like for me, the pose is lightened up, so I'm not feeling the spiciness the way that I was when I first got here. So I'm just going to turn my blocks down one notch and let myself lean a little further in until I find sensation again. But for you, you might be getting the signal that's the opposite, that you should back off for this last minute. And again, that's the dance that we do in yin postures. Always start more gently, and then allow yourself to increase the intensity as time goes on. And it's possible that for you, this will never be your favorite pose. If you have some space where you could lie on your back and put your feet up on your couch or something like that, that's an alternative way to approach a straddle like this. Gravity kind of does the work for you in a different way. So we're going to take 2 more big breaths here. And then let go of that breath with a big ah, and inhale your way up and lean yourself back and bend your knees. And then you can bring your legs back together. And this is the part where you can decide whether you're going to want to stretch out on your back and do Shavasana, or whether you're going to want to turn this into a meditation pose. Whether that's a seated pose or a lying down pose is up to you. Now, my inclination is to lie back down and do some Shavasana, because I did the fishy one with the pillow underneath my back earlier, and so I'm interested in kind of laying back down and seeing where my practice took me. So I'm just going to move a few things over here. Make a little bit of room. I like to have a little blanket for my head. And I like a little blanket or a pillow underneath my legs. So I'm going to set myself up like that. And if you're doing a seated meditation posture, you can just hang with that. And we won't necessarily stay here long, although I will leave you in this pose if you want to stay longer than the recording is going to go on. But you can take a few moments just to organize yourself. Let your arms stretch out if that's available. And then whether you're sitting up or you're lying down, just pause and notice the overall sensation of being embodied, of being in a body. Does the overall quality of your body feel light or heavy, fizzy, or solid? Just kind of checking in with, like, what does it feel like to be in this space? And then you can sort of do a little bit of a scan, and while you're doing that, you can also sort of work a little bit into those. So spread your toes out, flex and point the ankles, and then let the legs relax completely. And feel the sensation of the legs resting, however you've put them. Now, depending on the position you're in, your pelvis will be weighted in different places, but noticing the weight of your body resting in your pelvis, your hips, whether it's the back of the pelvis or the sit bones that your weight is resting on. Just notice that beautiful basin of support for your body. And then bring your awareness to the beautiful sweeping architecture of your spine. Oh, the spine is the most interesting, I think, structure in the body. And start like down at your little tailbone and feel how that curls in or out, depending on you. Most people, it curls in a little bit. And then feel the kind of sacral area, the area where the back of the pelvis and the spine are joined, which gently rises into the low back arch and then gently sweeps down to fill up where the rib cage lives. And feel how the weight of your upper body rests beautifully across that expanse of your ribs. As you arrive near the shoulder blades, you might feel that gentle arch kind of coming back up through the neck and gently resting the back of your head again on the floor. And notice how the upper body extremities, the arms, the ears, everything can relax into that support of the spine. Relax through the mouth and let the lips get a little softer. And relax the eyes and let the forehead and all the tissue around the temples get a little more spacious. And we make our connection to the earth through our bones, the soles of our feet, our pelvis, our spine, but we make our connection to the heavens through the crown of our head. And so also feeling yourself a child of the sky. And the beautiful blooming open of that upper chakra right above your head. Now this is where you could just stay here for as long as you like. Don't go anywhere. Or this might be the moment where you stretch into all of the edges, knowing that you can come back here whenever you need. Bring your knees, give yourself a hug. It's good to hug your favorite yogi every day. And then you can roll to your side and pause there. And when you're ready, sit up. Once you've come to a seated position, and you don't have to, you can stay where you are. But when you've come to a seated position and you're ready to get the rest of your day on, then don't forget to give yourself a moment just to pause. Be grateful for your practice. So there's a movement going on out in the world right now that's based on 11s and 1s. So when you get to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 11 in the morning, 11 at night, like anytime you catch a 1 happening on the clock, pause and do these 3 things. 1, be grateful for what is in your life. Be grateful for the blessings that you have and for everything that is going well. 2, imagine that everyone on the planet is able to be healthy and to experience this inner freedom from fear and from uncertainty. And 3, imagine that the earth is a beautiful garden of abundant life-giving plants and animals for everyone and all beings on the planet to enjoy. So, namaste, yogis. And just come back to that when you get back to another 11. Have a good rest of your day.